He's still there. Okay. I thought before he leaves, and because he said some things that need serious interrogation, I thought maybe someone from the floor has a question for him or a comment for him before he leaves. Anybody?
Actually,
yes,
I just wanted to add just a quick one. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
Great. I just wanted to add on. Sorry, the Zoom link got switched, so I ended up dropping off. But I really wanted to also, there was a question that came out about the empirical evidence about the damage that social media is doing, that social media has to children. There was one very big scandal last year where, Meta and its platforms actually did their own internal research around the effects that social media companies are having, especially companies such as Instagram, are having on children. And even from their own research, they were able to identify I think, it was for a said number of girls out of 10, Instagram actually made women who had body issues 10 times worse. And I this is not something that is completely foreign. Like, I'm not surprised that is actually happening, given that, even amongst, that even such anxieties exist even amongst, adult populations as well. So, given when you consider the kind of anxieties that adults are likely to face because of social media, things like keeping up with the Joneses, trying to make sure that they always have the latest flashy thing, you can imagine that such kind of effects are actually 10 times worse when it comes to children. And it's actually based off of their own research. The effects of these things are likely to have on our children is actually something of very big concern, and that we should actually try and pay as much attention to as well. That's, of course, not to say that it also has some maybe positive benefits to child development, but that remains up for debate.
So Danga and Edith, you had your hand up. Anybody else so that I can see? Edith, and then two people at the back, and then we can move on.
Yeah, I have my microphone, my goose mic, thank you. My question was for Danga, because we've talked about mis and disinformation, but I want to know to what extent is malinformation a problem, particularly within the region, and how does that affect, because we're talking about it already, the issue of politics?
Thanks, Edith. Two hands at the back. Right there. Very quick ones, please. I think we only have 13 minutes.
Thank you, please. Thank you so much. From the bank, I wanted to respond to one of the causes of misinformation or disinformation.
Just a moment. We want to direct any questions to Odanga because he has to leave. Rukia and Jennifer are still here. I think
Thank you. To Odanga straight. He talks about social media platforms being responsible and accountable. But then realize that the people who spread fake news also have fake accounts, catfish. How are the social media platforms going to be accountable when the people behind the fake news are also fake themselves?
Thanks. And maybe last intervention from here.
Thank you so much. My name is Ruvimbo Gore, and I've understood that you best on saying that social media is spreading fake news. But then based on a recent research that I did personally on Zimbabwe, I've realized that the main TV station is spreading fake news and it's spreading propaganda. Then we have a certain page on Instagram, it's called Zim Celebrities. That page has saved all the Zimbabweans from the fake news that has been spread by the national TV. So in as much as we want to blame social media for spreading fake news, can we also go back and say, as journalists in the field, we are contributing to spreading fake news as we sit on our seats as the anchors, the editors, and the producers? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there was last burning one. Just, yes. Yes, you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for the chance. Earlier, my name is Muteti Daniel. Earlier, we talked about how radio, especially small and community media, how radio is lagging behind in audience research. Yeah? And most journalists depend on the social media, depend on online platforms as a source of news. So how safe is this for reporters to be reporting from fake news? Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. You got 3 questions, maybe 1 minute, Odanga. I hope you heard the questions.
Just testing. Yeah, testing. Can you hear me?
Can do.
Great. So let me respond to the first question about malinformation, okay? Now, it's very important for us to recognize that malinformation is actually the biggest problem for social media platforms. Why? Because right now, what we have been talking about when it comes to misinformation and disinformation is that it depends on a binary component, which is that something is either true or something is either false, right? But when it comes to very critical times in our society, especially such as elections or when pandemics break out, we end up in a gray area of information where we don't necessarily know what is true and we do not necessarily know what is false. It becomes very hard for us to actually verify the information that is coming out. Now, for the journalists in the room, of course, you know that it's incredibly hard to go ahead and do reporting on information that has been unverified. But unfortunately, when it comes to social media, all those rules get thrown out of the window. So, you know, this is perhaps the biggest challenge that social media companies face. And a big part of the problem is also, again, coming back to how they're designed. They're designed to allow information to go viral, and specifically unverified information has a great potential to actually go viral on these platforms. So unfortunately, we end up in a case whereby we typically malinformation is what leads to information indigestion, or what we call information disorder. A state of being in a society whereby, and maybe the Kenyans who were around, or anyone who was around in the days following the election can understand this, we end up in a state whereby it's incredibly hard for everybody or anybody who is within that environment to actually understand whether something is true or false. It's incredibly hard for you to be able to figure out whether the information you're receiving is it true or is it something fake. And that in itself actually becomes a problem, because a lot of the people that will be there will, you know, you end up in a state of heightened anxiety within a population, which can very easily end up lending itself to violence. So one of the things that we keep telling platforms is there are some measures that they can institute to actually try and deal with malinformation, especially during critical times. One of them is perhaps trying to implement labeling policies that try to say, you know, that essentially try to say that, look, like letting people know, we don't know whether this information is true, we don't know whether this information is false, but just be careful as you consume this information, right? And try to direct people as much as possible towards information that has been verified. It is not a perfect sport, it is not a perfect science, but it is, you know, there are some emerging solutions towards trying to deal with the malinformation problem that platforms have. I hope I've been able to answer that question incredibly clearly. Now, when it comes to catfishing, I know this is an incredibly huge problem for social media platforms, because it's one of the most direct forms of real world harm that end up happening. People get kidnapped, people get conned, people end up losing their livelihoods purely because of catfishing. And not to mention, people get heartbroken because of catfishing, right? It is, there are many concerns around, number one, how do platforms ensure that the people who are signing on to their platforms are actually real? I think that's a very, very important thing to address. And secondly, who exactly becomes liable in this case? Is it the person who has tried to evade detection, or rather who is doing the catfishing, or the platforms? I would say it's actually both, because it is a platform's prerogative to try and make sure that, or rather to try and minimize the amount of scamming through catfishing that is happening on its platform by trying to institute things like multiple forms of verification of the identity of the people that are signing onto the platform. Sometimes it's going to work, but other times it's a double-edged sword also in terms of the amount of privacy that people end up, or rather not even the amount of privacy, the violations of privacy that might come about purely because of these attempts to try and prevent catfishing and, reduce the amount of scamming that happens through catfishing. It is a battle that platforms choose. Some platforms go ahead and say that, look, because we're trying to prevent as much catfishing as possible from our platform, we are going to authenticate the identity of everyone that comes on. For some people, for some platforms, they're about anonymity and saying that, look, you can join our platform and be whoever you want to be. So, there's definitely some aspects
Odanga,
of that
that
need to be watched out for.
I just wanted to mention that we only have a few minutes, so please maybe take 30 seconds to respond to the last question as well.
I think just on the question of fake news and safe for reporters, I would just say, journalists have to be journalists. You must verify your information and establish whether it's true offline, especially before you go ahead and report on it. Please do not rely on social media to do your reporting. It is an incredibly terrible idea. We've seen a lot of it. The bad side is much worse than the good side. That's it.
Try and put one question or ask Rukia to respond to one issue that you just said. That sometimes it's very difficult to determine whether information is true or false. And especially when we're talking about professional journalism. Is that really true, Rukia? That, even we as people, as consumers, is it true that we are unable to tell?
Yeah, that's true to some point, but like my colleague here just mentioned, critical thinking is very important when you're consuming any kind of information, yeah? But if a journalist finds themselves in a state where they are not sure of what sort of information they are going to spread to their publics, we have said this over and over, find means to verify before you share it, yeah? Because it is human nature for us not to know everything. It is human nature that you are not gonna be sure and have each and every other thing at the tip of your fingers. And it is very important to make sure that you do your research. Perhaps you look at, because what we do is we find experts in particular fields that are going to help us verify the kind of information that has just been sent to us. Because one way we do this, we are countering misinformation, disinformation, and fake news with technology. It spreads with technology, but if we want to counter it at the same rate, we are also involving a hybrid method. We are using technology with a debunk bot, and this is something that we came up for. It's a WhatsApp number, but it is managed by people who have the skills to actually disseminate the kind of information that is right, but also to read between the lines. Because sometimes the misinformation is between one or two words that are going to completely change the meaning and turn it into something that perhaps the sender did not intend to put to you as the consumer, but that is how you are going to perceive it.
Right, thank you, Rukia. I think I'm just looking at the time. And I just wanted to ask Jennifer a quick question, because the issue of accountability and liability has come up. And I'm also thinking to push it a little further to the duty of care. So who owes the community that you serve that duty of care? And how can we hold, because accountability is two-way. It's both on the big tech, for example, and it's on society, and even the children themselves. And I don't know how you define a child. 18-year-olds are producing content, and I think legally 18-year-olds are children. So how do we hold them to account for whatever it is that they are doing?
It's working now, yeah? Okay, thank you so much. The definition of a child is any person below the age of 18 years. So, yes, number one, the primary duty bearer is the government. We need very strong regulations when it comes to information. So we've seen progress with the European Union. They have an amazing policy on how to handle information and to what information can go into their geo space. Okay, and that's what, when it comes again to misinformation, it just depends on the geographic location where you are at. There's some information that they are allowed in Africa, there are others that are not allowed in Africa. And I just want to respond to the questions that you spent. The problem now with misinformation, disinformation, it is gone science because of lack of a good word. So because someone wants to spread a particular misinformation, they go to the extent of having research papers, paying researchers to come with quote-unquote facts about that issue. So when you as a journalist, you're going to research, you find, oh, there's facts, so this is true. And then issues to do with deep fake, okay? So there's a whole quote-unquote field on deep fake, people who are just there, and their work is to be able to advance misinformation. So who is accountable? For me, I think it's our governments. Okay, we have to be able to come with stronger regulations on how to hold big tech accountable. Okay. So I'm just about to finish. So we need to come very strong regulation and policies on how can we hold big tech accountable? Because without that, it's going to still go on and on and on, and we're not be able to stop it. Thank you so much.
And the time managers just ensure that tell us where that clock was working, because I can't see where 1 hour has gone to. And it's was it 1 hour? Because
2 minutes.
I think it shows that our time is up, and we're eating into the next session. But unfortunately, this is an issue that can go on and on, or the discussion can go on and on, an interesting one, one that is, of course, of interest to many of us as scholars, as practitioners, as young people, but also, concerning society, particularly when you look at disinformation, from the fact that it's very, very harmful to society and to important matters like democracy and the rule of law and accountability. So thank you very much, panelists, Odanga, Rukia, and Jennifer. And please. So I'm unhappy to leave this stage, so I'm not going to leave. Thank you anyway.
Let's give them another very big hand clap. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. So I just wanted to find out from the room, based on that session that we've just had, has anyone here fallen for fake news at any point, and what was that for you? You saw a story, you thought it was true, you fell for it, probably even shared it a couple of times, only to find out that you had probably shared totally fake information. Okay, very, very briefly, just share headlines, right? No detail. Do you have a mic? Okay, we'll start off with you. Just very quickly tell us, what did you fall for?
Yeah, it was Lumbuye. I think he said that the general died.
Right.
And it was very elaborate on TikTok. So it went viral. I also double tapped.
And you went quickly to say...
No, I didn't share it anyway. I just double tapped. I liked.
You became the
I did verify it because I also debunked.
You became one of the RIP crowd. You know, we are always in a rush to try and make sure that we were out, fast to get the info out, yeah? RIP General. Killing people for nothing.
Ben, you remember the times of the sacking of the general?
Right.
General Kale Kaihura. I bought that newspaper, the red paper by then. I bought it every day for 2 months, but there was no good news in it.
there's one in front, and then we'll come to the back quickly, and then get ready for our next session.